What's up, garden friends? Jeff here, Tropical Plant Party. How's everybody doing? I hope you're good. You better be good. I'm great. Fall is here. It's been here for a while, but it has felt like summer here in my Zone 6 garden. I have to say I'm very lucky that I've made it to pretty much the end of October and haven't had to move my plants quite yet. But it's about time. Also, it is suddenly very windy. I'm going to try my best to film with my mic away from the wind. Might be tricky, so I apologize if there ends up being noise in here from the wind. I want to talk about the colds and how I know when I should bring my plants inside. You would think it's as simple as just looking at your forecast and saying, oh, well, it's going to be 40 degrees tonight, I should move my plants in. There's more to it than just that. For example, I have to keep in mind the microclimate. Just because it's supposed to get 40 degrees doesn't mean that's what my plants are going to be experiencing. We've been in the 40s here for weeks at nighttime. I mean, off and on in the 40s. And things are still growing and looking okay. Why would that be? Well, it's because they're on top of dark pavement. As long as it's sunny, this soaks up a lot of heat, releases that slowly at night. And then there's a large body of water here that is much warmer than the air. So that helps with anything that's fairly close to the water. And then another thing I have to think about is how long has the particular plant I'm concerned about been exposed to cold temperatures. And I don't mean has it been cold for a few days. I'll talk about that later. I mean, in how many years has it been outside and experienced cold temperatures? Now, this large Robellini back here, Phoenix Robellini, the pygmy date palm, if I had just purchased this, knowing that it had just been shipped straight up from Florida, it's never experienced a cold winter ever in the entire time it's been growing, I would bring this in at 40 degrees. But I've had this for years. It has experienced many frosts, and it has survived them. I'm also well equipped to treat any fungal or bacterial issues, rot that could result from the frost. But ideally, I prefer to not even let them get to that point. But should it happen, I know how to handle it. And every single year with my plants, not all of them, but with like the Robellini right here, this is a good example of one of the plants that I push a little bit further every single year. And I bring them outside in the springtime before temperatures are super, super hot. So they're a little bit more accustomed to the temperatures having more of, if you were to look at a graph, the temperatures having more of a curve to them throughout the year instead of just being warm like it is in their native growing range. A better example might be this queen palm. I've had this particular queen palm for probably 5 or 6 years. You know, they grow very, very fast. It was probably 6 feet tall when I got it. It's now, I mean, to the top of the spear up there, the spear leaf, I'd say maybe 15 to 20 foot. Quick growers. If I had just gotten this, I wouldn't leave it outside into the lower 30s. But I know that I can leave this outside around 30 degrees isn't going to kill this particular queen palm. And a lot of queen palms are very, very hardy to begin with. But I do know this one's going to be more hardy for me because of what is experienced. But back here I have a spindle palm. Well, spindle palms, very tropical. They're not going to take any cold. So below 45, it's going in, as long as that 45 has been going on for a few days. I'll talk about duration here in a moment. Adenidia palms. Try and acclimate them all you want to. They're never going to adjust to the cold. It's just not them. They don't like it. And then the same thing for the Eureka palms. They're just tropical, just the way it is. They're not going to acclimate. And now the acclimation theory when it comes to tropical plants, particularly palms, is a highly debated subject. I'm not getting into that in this video. I've been doing this with my palms for about, I don't know, I want to say 20 years. And the palms I've had that I have left out a little bit longer every single year, not the first year I've had them though, are always more cold tolerant. This is just anecdotal, it's my experience, and there are other factors at play. And the main factor when it comes to whether or not I should go ahead and move them in isn't just the colds, it's, well, how fast is it going to get colds? And how moist is the environment? Is it going to be raining a lot? If it's going to be really wet outside, I'm moving them in because that's when the rot kicks in. If there's going to be freezing temperatures, which is typically below 38, that risk of frost really goes up. There's variables with the air pressure and humidity and all those things. But in general, 38, I just rounded up to 40 to be safe with the more tropical palms. I'm not going to take the risk. Any moisture when it's that cold will lead to rot, and treating rot in smooth trunked palms is much more difficult than in a woody trunked palm like a Robolini or a windmill palm or a Butia or even a Queen. Because with the woody trunk palms, if you have to, you can just behead them. It's not ideal, but you can do that if you have to. It's never come to that for me. Well, actually one time, many years ago. So, that being said, the low tonight where I am, 43. Very cold for these guys. However, the high tomorrow, 75. And the low tomorrow is 51. So it's okay. As long as it's not below, like, the high needs to go above 75 the next day. I give them 2 days below 50 and above 40. The reason I only do 2 days, and this is more a rule that I apply for my orchids, is because when temperatures are cool, they're not taking up moisture. They're not taking up water. So they're more likely to desiccate. And no freezing, thawing, meaning I'm not going to let it frost and then go into warm temperatures over and over and over again. Freezing and thawing and freezing and thawing encourages bacterial growth, which encourages rot. And as I've said before in my other videos, cool and dry is always better. So that's kind of the gist of it. Basically, it depends on the type of palm, how long I've had the palm, and weather conditions. Not just the cold, but how fast is it going to get colds, how much moisture is there going to be, and how long is it going to be cold, and what's the high the next day, and then the microclimate. It's a whole big fun puzzle of things to have to keep in mind when evaluating when to bring them in. But if you're less of a gambler than I am, then it doesn't hurt to go ahead and say, hey, it's going to be below 50. I'm just going to move them in just to be safe. Nothing wrong with that. I used to do that too. I still do that with my very tropical plants, except instead of 50, I do more like 45 is kind of the cutoff, really 43. But with some plants, that doesn't matter. You can look at them and you can tell, hey, do these need to come in? This Alpinia, you see how the leaves are curled? Typically, when the light isn't directly on them, the leaves are open. And this has been watered. It was watered automatically by my sprinklers, which I have reduced them down by 70% because the temperatures are cooler. But the leaves shouldn't be curled. This is because they're cold. More than likely because they're cold. But this heliconia, it's going in right now. Heliconias like it hot. No exceptions ever, except for, obviously there's genetic differences. There are varieties that can handle cooler temperatures, but this one right here, not happy with it. It's going inside right now. No microclimate is saving this one unless it's an intense one. But you can see here, the leaves are curled. It just doesn't look happy. And the soil's not terribly dry, so I know, hey, this guy needs to come inside. It needs to come inside now. And the cool temperatures bring about color changes. Here in the Stapelia, you can see that red kicking in. That's because it's cold. It's not happy with the cold. Sometimes, you know, excessive sun and magnesium and all of these things play a factor too. But when I start to see this color, like as soon as the color sets in, I go, okay, you're coming inside now. Just to be safe. Because that can very quickly turn into a rotten plant. And I would normally have already brought this one in and the heliconia, but it wasn't supposed to get into the 40s. So that wasn't planned on. And then the other nights when it's dipped into the 40s, it was jumping back up into the 80s the next day. So it was only a few hours below 50, and they were okay with that. But the further we get into fall, now it's, okay, we're going to drop into the 40s, but then the high, like the high today is 52. And since there's no bounce back meaning a high, hot temperature, then that means it's time to move them inside. And this is how I gauge things with my orchids as well, except my orchids, I give less leeway. The low tonight, 37 degrees. Not a risk I'm going to take, especially since the high tomorrow is, I think, like 62. That's too cold for them. Below 75, the majority of the orchids, of the truly tropical orchids, below 75 degrees, they're not taking up nutrient. They're going to desiccate. So it's not just that the cold can kill them, like frost can actually cause their cells, their plant cells, to rupture and pop open from the freezing. It's like if you were to put a bottle of water or a soda can or something in your freezer, it'll explode. That's from below freezing temperatures, frosty temperatures. But that's not all that you have to keep in mind. You have to keep in mind, if it's not going to get hot enough, then they're not going to take in nutrient and they're going to desiccate. And desiccation is a pain in the butt to bring an orchid back from. I'll take it over rot and fungus and bacteria and all of these things any day, especially viruses, but it's not ideal. It's a setback, and we don't want setbacks, so orchids are going in too. A lot of them are going to be coming back inside, actually, because there aren't any high temperatures in the next 10-day forecast that are above 75, or even above 70. It's supposed to be fairly cool, even though the lows will be in the 50s. It's still not going to get hot enough during the day, because the highs are only going to be in the mid-60s. That's not enough for tropical plants. It's fine for, say, my mule palms. They're fine with it. The windmill palms, they'll be okay with it. Even my big sago palm down there, that'll be okay. But the crotons, the adenidias, the areca palms, the spindle palms, tropical plants, nope. And that's also kind of the last thing I have to say about that, which is we'll know what kind of plant you have. If you don't know what it is, then how are you going to be able to evaluate its cold tolerance? You know, if I didn't know this was an adenidia, I'm just like, oh, it's a palm tree. And, you know, people grow palm trees all the way up in the southern part of Virginia, so it'll be okay. That's not the case. This is an adenidia, they're tropical. You know, I know that these are mule palms, they can handle. I know my windmill palms. Know what you have, you know, or do your best to identify it. So you at least have an idea or learn the characteristics. There really aren't any smooth-trunked palms that are very cold tolerant. There are some king palms that are slightly more cold tolerant, but overall, if you have a smooth-trunked palm, they're generally not going to handle the cold anywhere near as well as like a pindu or a butia or these mule palms, which are hybrid between the butia, which is butia, and the queen palm. Okay, that's going to do it. It's starting to drizzle, and I've rambled long enough that hopefully things made sense here. That was just kind of me talking about how I evaluate my situation with what to do with my plants come fall time. So, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment down below. I love talking to y'all. Hope everybody's doing well, and as always, keep on growing, everybody. Bye-bye.